Oma Sato Ma Satkamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritangamaya, Abir Moiti. O dearly beloved Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless confusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through, light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. So because we have Amar with us this evening, who's not familiar with what we do here, I'll just give this brief introduction. We read poems from this book, Love Poems from God. The poem is read twice, and then we simply say what's on our mind in reaction to what these are 12 realized souls whose poems have been collected by Daniel Ladinsky and published as this book, Love Poems from God. So, Heidi, would you read for us Humility and Compassion? This is by St. Francis of Assisi. We're reading St. Francis of Assisi's poems.
Yeah, and that's on page 37 in the book. Sure. Humility and compassion. Can true humility and compassion exist in our world, in our words and eyes, unless we know we too are capable of any act? Humility and compassion. Can true humility and compassion exist in our words and eyes unless we know we too are capable of any act?
And you know who truly embodied this that I know about, perhaps many, including, of course, St. Francis of Assisi, but another great Catholic, more recent, Father Thomas Keating. Father Thomas Keating, one of the things that he did, as busy as involved and as involved as he made time to visit prisoners who were imprisoned for life without parole, where they'd done something so drastic that they were imprisoned for life without parole. And he would go and visit them. And there is at least one testimony that you can find in which this prisoner said, "This man completely transformed my life, my vision of what had happened to me, and where I am and what I'm doing." And of course, he was a lifetime prisoner without parole in a maximum security prison. And he said it was because this man did not judge me in any way. He simply loved me. He simply loved me. So Father Thomas Keating embodied this. Anything else from anyone? Can true humility and compassion exist in our words and eyes unless we know we too are capable of any act? Another example of the reality of this is Fred Rogers. For many years, I puzzled. How could Fred Rogers say, with complete sincerity and complete transparency to anyone, whether it be a 4-year-old child holding a toy submachine gun, and obviously an angry child, or the Pope, or the President of the United States, or anyone else, how could he say, I like you just the way you are? This was a question mark for me until I read this poem in this book. And suddenly it was clear. Fred Rogers knew this too, whether he knew this particular poem. He knew this truth. He didn't judge at all. And that is so moving, so moving. So with that, anything else from anyone else about this short little homily from St. Francis?
I just think it is very short, but it's really powerful. You know,
Oh, yes.
it really makes you think, and you know, that non-judgment. It's easier said than done. You know, and yeah, that's.
Well, it's only in the presence of that real non-judgment. And it starts with not judging ourselves, of course. You know, we can't be non-judgmental toward others until we get non-judgmental about ourselves, which is what the last lines of this are about. But then true humility and compassion can flow from our words and eyes when we are lifted up this way.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Yeah, I think humility is an important word here too. I think it's very easy when someone is being compassionate or thinks they are being compassionate to another to somehow put yourself above them.
Oh, yes.
So I think the fact that he leads with the word humility before compassion is really telling.
Well, that pose of compassion is really pity, and
right.
and it's just kind of disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
But it's exists in our world.
Oh yes, well, those who pity others are those who are given to self-pity.
Mm.
You know, as Goethe said, a person sees in the world what they carry in their heart. So if they've got self-pity, then you're in a pitiable condition. I relate to that. That's not compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And the through line here, as we've talked about, Ladinsky, in his arrangement of these poems for each of these poets, has a through line. So the through line really shows up. Rochelle, do you have the book?
I do, yes.
Can you read Always from the Child's Hand, please?
Yes. Always from the child's hand, the sword should be removed. Oh, hang on here. I'll make it bigger. Always from the child's hand, the sword should be removed. I think every nation is an infant.
And would you read it again, please?
Always from the child's hand, the sword should be removed. I think every nation is an infant.
Infants can't think in terms of humility and compassion. They can't think of being capable of any act. They just don't. None of that is available in their minds yet. And so every nation is an infant. Yes, indeed. That's why we behave so. As nations, we behave so. totally irresponsibly toward one another. Anything else from anyone?
The first stanza rings so true and raw in light of the shootings the last couple of weeks.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And all the discussions about what to do.
Yes. Which result in what? Nada.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Well, I think we can see that this one poem follows nicely from these two short poems go together. Humility and compassion. We're capable of any act, and we're capable of terrible acts with a sword or gun if we are still thinking and behaving as an infant. Jillian, would you be so kind as to read No One Knows His Name?
Yes. No one knows his name. No one knows his name, a man who lives on the streets and walks around in rags. Once I saw that man in a dream. He and God were constructing an extraordinary temple. No one knows his name, a man who lives on the streets and walks around in rags. Once I saw that man in a dream. He and God were constructing an extraordinary temple.
Anything from anyone about this one?
That just speaks for itself. It's so incredibly raw. It just shows that
Well,
the only thing God is
puts me-
involved with is our soul, and can construct temples with us at any
Yes.
time and in any station of life.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes, we have no idea what's going on inside another person.
And to your point, Shankara, of there being a through line, I think this follows on too, in that, how can, if the first stanza encourages you to judge a man who's in rags, then what a surprise when you see that he's building a temple with God. So
Yes.
again, to have humility and compassion for the homeless in our world.
Yes, yes, oh yes. And it puts me in mind of a story told by Sri Ramakrishna. Once there was a wandering spiritual being of some kind. He was in human form. He came wandering into the Dakshineshwar temple courtyard where Sri Ramakrishna lived. And Sri Ramakrishna saw him, and he was carrying in one hand a potted plant that was dead, and in the other a stick. And he too was dressed in rags. And he ate from the leaf plates that were thrown out from the dining hall. He didn't go in the dining hall and take a meal. He ate the leftovers that were on the leaf plates and that were and he took from them with the dogs that fed from them. But then he came back and he stood in front of the temple and began to sing. And Sri Ramakrishna's remark was that the whole temple compound shook when he sang. the whole temple compound shook. And Sri Ramakrishna didn't exaggerate or tell inaccurate stories. You can believe, at least I believe, that every word of what he said is true. And so, because of the reverence that Sri Ramakrishna held this man in, as he left the temple compound, Sri Ramakrishna's nephew, Hridoy, who helped take care of him, ran after the man and said, "Give me realization, give me realization." The man just kept walking, so Hridoy still ran after him. And the man finally turned around and threw a rock at Hridoy. He said, "Go away, go away." And Hridoy insisted, "No, no, you give me something, you give me something." So then the man said, "When you can see the water that runs in this ditch and the water of the Ganges as the same, then you will have knowledge."
Mm.
Now, the water that ran in ditches in those days was sewer water. They didn't have sewers. The water that ran in the ditches was sewer water. And so this is what he was saying to Hridoy. When you can see this sewer water and the water of the Ganges, said to be the most sacred water in the world, as the same, then you will have knowledge. So I think this man who no one knew and who lived in rags, and that man who came to the Dakshineshwar temple were of one being. Anything else from anyone?
I love that story, brother. Thank you. That was profound. Thank you for that story.
Yes, when you see Yogatmananda, you might ask him, tell him that you heard this story and ask him to expound it for you, since you'll be with him for some days. There'll be time to do that. I'm sure he'll have something truly remarkable to say.
I'm going to write that down. Thank you.
The man who came to the Dakshineshwar temple and was holding a potted plant and a stick. He'll know exactly what you mean. Anything else from anyone? Oh, there comes one of, is that Pistol or Mama Cat?
That is Pistol.
It seems like it would be Pistol because he walked right in front of the cat.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he has a mind of his own.
Right. Don't they all, those fur persons? All right. No one knows his name. A man who lives on the streets and walks around in rags. Once I saw that man in a dream. He and God were constructing an extraordinary temple. So, Rochelle, it's back to you. Like roots?
Okay. Our hands imbibe like roots, so I place them on what is beautiful in this world, and I fold them in prayer, and they draw from the heavens light. Our hands imbibe like roots, so I place them on what is beautiful in this world, and I fold them in prayer, and they draw from the heavens light. And just let me say that St. Francis, I don't know how much deeper you can go with St. Francis.
No.
I don't. Wow. So
Anything from anyone about what he means by our hands imbibe like roots? Well, it puts me in mind of a Zen koan or Zen saying, Zen Buddhist saying. Where are your hands? If you know where your hands are, you know where your attention is. Our hands imbibe like roots, so I place them on what is beautiful in this world. So I put my attention on what is beautiful in this world. And I fold them in prayer. And they draw from the heavens light. They draw from the heavens light. There's no apostrophe there. So it's
Right.
not, it's almost like there should be a comma
A
after
comma. Yeah.
after heavens.
Yeah.
I fold them in prayer. And they draw from the heavens light. So I put my hands on the heavens by folding them in prayer.
I feel that the touch is another sensory organ that we are not used to using and exercising, but it's there for us, and that's how healers work. And I think I mean, I know for a fact that we can draw in energy from our fingertips on an object. I know that from a teacher I've had and worked with, and they are very, very sensitive if you just give them a chance. And I feel like St. Francis kind of knew that, maybe by being in nature and touching trees, and then the incredible vibrations that he was exposed to every day.
Yes. And like roots. I mean, the roots imbibe all the nutrients that they need. I mean, there are plants that eat insects, it's true, but almost all plants draw everything they need through their roots, everything they need.
What I find so interesting about this is that he says, I place them on what is beautiful in this world. And the next line is, I fold them in prayer. So he's placing his hands on himself or herself. I guess it's him being St. Francis. So he's honoring nature, but his own being as part of nature is what I gather from this.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, Julie. Yes. And in doing that, honoring himself, perhaps with a capital S, then he draws from heaven's light.
Right.
Then the hands imbibe from the heavens, light. These little short poems of St. Francis, you know, he didn't publish them in his lifetime. He didn't write books or publish things. Other people did sometimes publish some of the things that he said. But he kept diaries. He kept diaries. And that's where Ladinsky found these poems. These and in the writings of others that had heard St. Francis say these things.
And also what I think of when I read that first stanza is like just physically, like your hands, you know, the fingers of your hands are kind of like the roots of a tree, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Like your arm can be the trunk of the tree, you know, and then your fingers kind of go deeper and, you know, drawing the light, the heaven's light, or, you know, whatever beautiful stuff.
Indeed, whatever beautiful stuff. And I think that very much relates to what Rochelle was saying.
Right.
That we often forget about our sense of touch and our hands. And one of the things that I've noticed as I've gone blind is that all of these other senses are being more emphasized. You know, I don't don't see well at all anymore. And that's fine. I mean, I'm not complaining. It's just there seems to be some compensation going on, particularly the hearing, as there's an idea not only in Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, but also in Christianity and probably in mystical Judaism as well. I'm sure it must be there in the Kabbalah, of the divine presence in the form of sound. And so music and people reciting poetry and so on has become, and therefore writing poetry has become more emphasized. The sound of words, the sound of music. Oh, all right, Heidi. God would kneel down. Oh, this is such a moving poem. God would kneel down.
Okay. God would kneel down. I think God might be a little prejudiced. For once he asked me to join him on a walk through this world, and we gazed into every heart on this earth. And I noticed he lingered a bit longer before any face that was weeping, and before any eyes that were laughing. And sometimes when we passed a soul in worship, God too would kneel down. I have come to learn God adores his creation. God would kneel down. I think God might be a little prejudiced. For once he asked me to join him on a walk through this world, and we gazed into every heart on this earth. And I noticed he lingered a bit longer before any face that was weeping, and before any eyes that were laughing. And sometimes when we passed a soul in worship, God too would kneel down. I have come to learn God adores his creation. That is beautiful.
Oh, yes.
He adores everyone equally.
Yes,
Right? Yeah.
exactly. Yes, that's in our evening prayer. Love, thou art partial to none.
No,
All are equal before thy
sight.
love, who is partial to none. We are equal before your
For thy sight.
I
For
was
once,
just listening. Oh, sorry, Heidi.
go ahead, Rochelle.
Oh, I was listening to a lecture by a Swami the other day, and I only caught part of it. And one of the things he said was, I caught the tail end of it. He said that since God is in his creation, he's in every object. And so wouldn't that give you the right to just turn and worship any object?
which is
And
which is such a pregnant thought.
yes.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So, yes.
Thank you for that very nice reading, Heidi. Anything else from anyone?
Well, just that second sentence in that first stanza. For once he asked me to join him on a walk through the world. I mean, they're not walking through the neighborhood, the countryside. They're walking through the world, you know?
Yeah.
I just love that, just the grandiose, the inclusivity of all that.
Now, this is why Santa Claus can do what he does on Christmas night.
Yeah, that must be, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know it for a fact. I mean, I got to tell you sometime. I'll tell you the story, not now, but when we're talking person, I'll
Okay,
tell you why I know that.
I love
I
your
used to
story.
spend a lot of time with Santa Claus.
I can't wait to hear that one, okay?
No, I mean, this, when he says this, that they walked through the world, I believe, again, I think we can take these saints absolutely at their word.
Mhm.
Oh, I'll just tell you the story. There was one time in my life, I was 15 years old. I was in such distress. I cannot even begin to tell you the intensity of the distress I was in. And so what I would do is I would go to sleep each night in the company of Santa Claus. And I mean St. Nicholas. And St. Nicholas, like all the saints, but I mean, he was Santa Claus. He came to me as Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, not the Coca-Cola Santa, please. Oh God, please, not the Coca-Cola Santa. That's a travesty. But the real Santa Claus, the real St. Nicholas. And I would go to sleep each night in his company. And he, like all these saints, is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. So what they say, walk through this world. That's why what is said about Santa, though it's a comical little song, he really can do what is said. And it was quite an experience that year when and then we moved. And when we moved from the house that we were in, and we moved to a different house, and that stopped. And when it stopped, I would wake up every morning with my hands so clenched. And moving into that new house, I would wake up every morning with my hands so clenched, it would take me about 5 minutes to get them open. So he lingered a bit longer before any face that was weeping. And now, of course, we can also relate very much to the line, and before any eyes that were laughing. I have come to learn God adores his creation. A devotee who comes here told me a story. She had a vision. She was sitting one morning in meditation, and this vision just opened up. And she and Sri Ramakrishna were standing by this beautiful, I mean, it was like Bali High, kind of beautiful seashore. And Sri Ramakrishna turned to her and gestured and said, I did that. I made that. And then he dived into the water and dissolved. That was her vision. I did that. I made that. And the description that was given of there is a scene in South Pacific where there is this incredible shoreline. It's in the movie. Incredible shoreline. That's what came into my mind when I was told about this vision. I did that. I made that. And clearly there was real adoration for what had been made. Anything else from anyone about this? Jillian, would you like to read anyone who suffered?
Sure. Anyone who suffered. I would not leave this earth until God promised me that my hands could always touch the face of anyone who suffered. Anyone who suffered. I would not leave this earth until God promised me that my hands could always touch the face of anyone who suffered.
This seems to me to be a direct echo, hundreds of years later, perhaps a millennium later, I don't remember the dates, of Rabia saying, when I entered God, I found I could reach out and touch anyone with healing. I could reach out and touch anyone. It's the exact same, that same omnipresence.
And again,
Yeah.
like the relationship that these St. Francis had, you know, with the divine to,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, can you imagine how that conversation went?
Very nice ideas. What a nice thought, how that conversation went. Yes.
I would not leave this earth until God promised me, you know? I mean, I don't know. Was that just a one-time conversation? Or
I think you're
I
right.
don't think so. That's how my brain thinks. It's like, what is that line? I mean, I'm
Well-
serious, you know, I mean, it is kind of comical, but you just think of the relationship that they had with the divine, and
That's
and it's just so, it's almost mind-boggling still to me. I mean,
yes, yes, yes. You just brought tears to my eyes, Heidi. That's absolutely true. And that's the underlying theme of this entire book, relationship. Relationship. Relationship with the divine. So beautifully said. And yes, what you can imagine St. Francis, you can just imagine saying, no, I'm not going. I'm not going until you make me this promise.
It sounds like the Bodhisattva who would not leave. He could have gone and dissipated, but he decided to come back and help and serve humanity. But I think that St. Francis entered the Christ mind, and I really think that he was walking in that secret place of the Most High, and he's reporting to us the phenomenon of love that exists there. And I think that's what's coming out in these poems. That's so it's each one of them it's like could take a day to just process, you know. They're so they're so rich. Yes.
And I think in this poem, but in many others too, he marries the divine with the physical everyday, right? My hands, not that I could from on high, you know, heal people with a bolt of lightning, right? He's saying my hands, the hands that I used to pray with when I was embodied, my hands could touch the face of anyone who suffered, not the soul or the disembodied mind. There's a sense of physicality that I really
love it. Yes, and that was the referral when Rabia was mentioned. That same physicality is in Rabia. She says, I tried painting, but slicing potatoes, I could fly better. I was able to fly better.
maybe the hands on the face, the significance of the face too. I don't know if there's something there.
Well, what does someone do when they love us? They caress our face.
Right.
They caress our, they hold, they caress our face.
Or if you might have a fever, they touch your forehead, right?
Yes,
Check
yes.
to wish you well, right? So there's something there too, the face, the hands on the face.
Mm-hmm.
The Holy Mother, Sri Sharada Devi, Sri Ramakrishna's wife, when she would bless people, she would touch their face, and then she would touch her fingers to her lips and then touch their chin. This is the Bengali way of giving a kiss. But she would stroke their face, put her hand on their head, but then she would kiss her fingertips and touch them on the chin. That physicality, as you were saying.
And the face is such an intimate part of us, right?
Oh, yes.
Not everybody, we don't allow anybody to touch our face the way we would to touch a hand or an elbow.
Right. Precisely. Oh, well said, Julie. No, not just anyone can touch our face.
And the other thing about the face, look, you have, so many of your senses there.
Yes.
So the eyes, the smell.
Oh, beautifully
You
observed.
have all of your senses up here, right? Or your heart is down here. You feel that, but you still feel with your head.
But you're right. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
It is the
That's
home.
great, Heidi.
It is the home of 4 out of the 5.
Very intentional, the hands and the face and the physicality, like Jillian said.
Yes. Well, you're so right. And, the physicality, it's so like St. Francis, as we'll see in a later poem, to have a conversation with a squirrel. and then when the squirrel produces these physical objects to relate to what, St. Francis says, was talking to the squirrel about, and St. Francis says, yeah, you get it. Physical things, real. The reality, the objects are worthy of adoration. Yes, God adores his creation.
But heck, I have a conversation with all the animals on my morning walk, the cats, the dogs, all of them.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, I recently requested the window. Since I've been here, I was not able to open the windows in my room. So finally, I just requested the contractor who does the stuff for us here, put a screen, open that window, but put a screen on it so that the bugs don't come in, so that I can hear the night. I can hear the night. And, it's interesting to hear the night. As I said, hearing has become more emphasized lately. And particularly in the morning when waking up. Oh my God, the birds are just going crazy. They just go crazy. Not at dawn, just before dawn. They sing at dawn, but just before dawn, when it's just starting to get gray, they just go crazy. I'd love to know what they were saying to one another. Of course, I understand it viscerally, but I don't understand it in any way literally. So, Jillian, in his sanity, is that it?
Sure. In his sanity, if all the tenderness in this world could reflect from my eyes, would you accept that love? If all the forgiveness the heavens have known could be offered from one face, would you accept that divine pardon? In his sublime sanity, every moment God offers that to us. anything that might comfort. In his sanity. If all the tenderness in this world could reflect from my eyes, would you accept that love? If all the forgiveness the heavens have known could be offered from one face, would you accept that divine pardon? In his sublime sanity, every moment God offers that to us, anything that might comfort. I think it's really interesting in this poem, Shankara, that the first stanza talks about my eyes, all right, the speakers, and then it's kind of generic, could be offered from one face. And then in the third section, it's God who is offering these things to us. So it's like he's making a transition from my eyes that are, as I see it, shining with the same divinity that God, with which God shines. But he kind of takes us very gently without saying God is within or the divine is within all of us. He kind of gives us that message.
Yes, so well observed. Yes, exactly. Precisely. You know, from like any good logician, from the particular to the general.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as you pointed out, it's all there right in the first stanza. If all the tenderness in the world, could reflect from my eyes. But then he asks the question, would you accept that love?
Mm-hmm.
Would you accept that love? He's saying, as you say, gently it goes from one to the other, that God is trying to comfort us at every moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to us to accept it. If all the forgiveness the heavens have known, if all the forgiveness the heavens have known, I mean, this is eons old. That's that much forgiveness. If all the forgiveness the heavens have known could be offered from one face, would you accept that divine pardon? In his sublime sanity, I love the word, in his sublime sanity, every moment God offers this to us, anything that might comfort.
It's almost like a challenge for a sweet challenge to say, you know, yes, accept the love that I give, knowing that it is a pure, hopefully, a pure love of God working through me as me.
Yes.
Right? That's what he's saying, that in its ultimate, that love is God speaking
In
through
its
us.
sublimity, yes.
Mm-hmm.
If we think about the word sublime.
Mm-hmm.
It's in his sublime sublime sanity. And as we know, many of us do not take that comfort. We beat ourselves up. We beat ourselves up relentlessly. I hear it all the time from people who talk to me here about how they're still beating themselves up, about not being adequate, not being this, not being that. All those horrible dark voices that exist in us. And we all know them well. We all know them well. As Don Juan Matus said, they are part of our horrible membership here.
Hmm.
We're educated to them. What's the matter with you? Why can't you be like your brother? Da 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 da. Teachers in school, you're talking out of turn. You say something in answer, and the class laughs. All these things, they just drive us backward and backward, and they make a mark on us.
Because at first read here, you think, well, goodness, all that, like those eons of, you know, the heavens, eons of forgiveness in the heavens, and, you know, all the tenderness in the world. Well, surely who could not accept that? But it's all the things you just said, why we don't accept it.
Yeah.
You know, because you first read it and you go, oh, sure. Well,
Yeah. Oh, sure.
oh, sure. I mean, yeah, that sounds easy, but we see, you know, the state of our world. If we all did accept that love and that grace, we may not be where we are today. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, we're infants with swords in our hands,
Right. Yeah.
and we mostly cut ourselves with them.
Mm.
Yeah.
We're not very good swords people.
And we're our worst critic too, aren't we?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's just what I was saying.
I
We
know.
learn to be our worst critics.
Mm-hmm.
We learn it. Don Juan Matus, and it's in the book, Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements as well. He talks about it as, he uses another word for it, but it's the same message. And
It's a good one to keep out and on the handy, you know, like paste this one up somewhere on your mirror.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
yeah, right.
Just to have it, maybe when you need a little encouragement, you know,
Right.
or a reminder of how loved we really are.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great, Heidi. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Put it on your mirror.
Used to be the old sticky in the back in the day, you know, on the mirrors.
Well, they still
Self-talk and all that.
exist.
Yep, I know.
Well, I don't think we'll try to read the next one. It's a long one, a wedding gift. So it's 8:29. I'm so glad that we gathered this way tonight to share St. Francis of Assisi. It is so heartwarming from here to share your company this way. And to hear how you hear these poems and what they stir in you. So any final words from anyone else?
I just feel the same way you do, brother. And I think this is a really a wonderful group and an enriching class, if you want to call it that, or discussion group.
Discussion, yeah.
Yeah.
Sharing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's marvelous.
And Amar, you're just very welcome with us. You're welcome to come to any of these gatherings. Amar is someone that I've been talking to, but he's only been here once, but perhaps he'll come again. Now he's visited us online this way. So just know how welcome you are, Amar, and how we're glad of your company. And the idea behind these gatherings is that in studying these things together, there is only one consciousness, as the Swami who started this place would teach. Consciousness is primary and is not plural. So though we seem to be plural, consciousness is not. The consciousness underneath it all, the appearance, is not. It is one. And so we feel one another. We feel one another just as St. Francis was gesturing to in so many of these poems tonight. Beneath it all, there is one, only one. Though there is, as St. Thomas of Aquinas, oh well, I won't go there. We'll get to him. I was about to start off on a ramble. That's what storytellers do. So, with that, Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the divine presence, in the love of the divine presence as our Father and Mother. With that, good night to you, sweet people. And
Thank you,
night.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
See you next week.
until tomorrow night.
Yes.
Yeah, tomorrow night we study the Holy Mother's life. That's our Tuesday night class. Same time, same station.
All right.
You remember that phrase? Same time, same station.
Bye.
Good night, all.
All right. Good night.